Hi, everybody. I'm Dia Dynasty. Um, Apologies for the very late start. We're having some issues, and I'm here by myself. So maybe there was a little mix-up on time. Regardless, I'm here to answer questions and discuss whatever kink related or sexuality and spirituality related stuff that you would like to talk about or ask me about. Um, in case you don't know who I am a professional dominatrix located in New York City at the moment. My name is Dia Dynasty. I am also the co-founder of La Maison de Rouge, along with Mistress Lucy Sweetkill. And most recently, I'm the matriarch of the Femdom Farm. So I'm happy to talk more about the Femdom Farm and its ethos and ideologies, and also, anything that is kink related, pertaining to the Femdom Farm, service related, anything like that. So I'm here to answer all your questions today. Let's see if we have any questions yet. Not yet. So let's see. We've got a few people logged in, and I appreciate all of you guys for showing up and always just, being receptive and enthusiastic fans and askers of questions that that are always appreciated. So I'm just going to read you a little bit about the Femdom Farm, because that's kind of like my current passion project right now, and it's one of the places, or it's the place where I intend to cultivate all of my lifelong loves and treasures and passions: nature, family, spirit, femdom, and harmony and unity with all. Through the ideologies of ecofeminism and paganism, I aim to harmonize with the natural world and balance the inequalities, and injustices that modern society has steeped our worldviews in through capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy. With reverence to the practices and wisdom of the indigenous peoples of the area, mainly Mohawk, I believe we can rehydrate our memory of living in harmony with the natural world, because it is, after all, where we come from. Let's see, we have a comment. Hi, okay, understand, best wishes. How is NYC Dungeon going? La Maison de Rouge. NYC Dungeon is going really well. It's actually more of a BDSM studio, and everything feels like it's opening back up in New York City, and people are booking sessions and doing real-time sessions. So I have no complaints, and I'm hopeful that as long as we're all careful and doing our due diligence and washing our hands and staying home if we're sick, then we will keep on opening back up in New York, and things will, return to normal. Okay. Thank you for asking, David. Let's see. So as for my personal interest in the Femdom Farm, my origin, my place of birth is Ithaca, New York, and I wish that I could speak more about like my ancestral yearnings of my actual ethnic heritage, but I've never really yearned for that kind of connection or had that kind of curiosity about ancient China. Maybe I will, later on down the line, but as of right now, what feels most resonant is living where I am, and doing the best that I can do here. So to try to kind of divorce myself of my American parts, and try to like go back to China. I was never even in China to begin with, but to try to investigate and deepen those roots feels a little foreign to me, actually. So I feel like I've lived a relatively successful life in New York City as a professional dominatrix, which is what I've been doing here this whole time, all like 11 and a half years. Um, I I find that living in the city definitely takes a certain amount of energy and determination that that I used to have as a younger person. But now, as somebody who has traveled the world and broadened my horizons, I feel like living in the city, there are things about living in the city that feel kind of like a trap, um, both energetically and physically. And then even larger or more pervasive than living in the city is this idea that capitalism kind of makes these demands of us that are really hard to maintain at times. Like you're always having to be productive, you're always having to work, you're always having to put forth the effort to make money. And when I think about um, the life that people used to live before capitalism made such demands on us, people were free to just kind of live off the land and to be. And going back even further into the way that excuse me, that indigenous folks lived here on this wonderful continent that used to be called Turtle Island. um, there was this symbiosis and this harmony with nature that the the humans understood that nature would always provide as long as the humans took care of the nature. And taking care of nature does not mean like building parks that have paved, walkways and parking lots and things like that, even though that, was a form of it later on. I feel like taking care of nature is observing its magnitude and power, and really working to understand and to observe how nature, operates on it. It's got its own beautiful rhythms and cycles, and adapting ourselves to that. And as we're very, urbanized and kind of, some of us are rather stuck in our habits um, of city dwellings. It's a whole new type of lifestyle to live with nature, to be in harmony with nature. And it's not like we can't do it from the cities, but cities are kind of taking over in some ways, these suburban sprawls. So, not to diss on cities, because I live in a really amazing city, New York City, but obviously, like, cities are full of people, and people provide community. People can be amazing in friendship and relationship and support in all different kinds of ways. But you can't eat people, and so food has to come from somewhere. We can't just survive off of like friendships and talking. So nature is one of the things that provides for us and that nurtures us, and being able to see that as like, you can't eat money, but you can eat like the stuff that you grow in your garden. That was one of the reasons that the Femdom farm felt like one of the places where I could really cultivate a sense of freedom and independence and sovereignty from all the systems that require money. So there is a sense of anti-capitalism about femdom farm. Although I don't really like the idea of anti anything, even though there, it's necessary to kind of define some ideologies as anti. I think that there is a time and a place for everything in the world. I'm sure that's debatable in many ways. So my forays into bountiful upstate nature and learning more about the abundance and reciprocity of the natural world have brought about a sense of sustaining richness and fulfillment to me like nothing else has. It's simultaneously life-sustaining, as in like growing your own food or foraging, fulfilling in an emotional way where I feel like I'm a part of something, like the air that I breathe in is from the trees and the air that the trees breathe in is from me. Because that's a form of symbiosis that's really important, and maybe people don't realize how important trees are. And also psychedelic in some ways. Nature, to me, the natural world is this place where I feel like I'm having an acid trip sometimes. And I don't know exactly how to explain that. It's like maybe the freshness of maybe my senses are just like more soothed and more open. My heart is more open in nature. I don't feel like I'm going to get like, raped by the plants or assaulted by the rocks or yelled at, by the bugs. I feel like everything is relatively peaceful. And there's definitely a sense of calm that comes with being in nature, and that's been scientifically proven. Let's see, we've got a couple of comments here. Jessica Andromeda says amen, and I couldn't agree more. Oh, here we have Miss Viola Parker. So I am going to switch up the roster now. I'm going to go ahead and change all of these banners real quick, and then let her in. So I'm glad that she is here now, and that I don't have to talk about the femdom farm too much more. But we can get back to that some other time, because I think that it's an area of curiosity for many, and I know some of you guys have asked about these kind of things, and so I'm happy to share more. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and edit all of these captions really quickly. Okay, and this is going to be a very unusual kind of interview, because it will be one thing on the title and then another thing in the content. So, hi, Mistress Viola.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes.
I came in early. I didn't know I would just be zoomed right in, but I was like making sure I had everything set up correctly, and then I'm like, oh, hi.
Oh, okay. Actually, we went live. I went ahead and went live because it was at 7:00 that I was hoping to touch base with you,
Oh,
and so I went ahead and just plopped you in because I wanted to, and I can't like back out now. So we're just gonna talk about things, and people are just gonna listen to it, and that's just going to be how it is.
Yay.
But here, let me show you. See, here is the banner for Mistress Viola. Is it Viola or Viola?
I like Viola.
Viola. Okay.
Yeah, Viola.
Perfect. And so I've got the correct banner on now, and then I've got this other one that has your social media handles and website on it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And please, like if I ask a question and it's not something you want to talk about, please always just, tell me or say that's not for discussion right now.
Okay.
And I'm just going to ask you basic questions, interview styles, so that we can get kind of like your origin story and get to know you a little bit better. If it gets too personal, let me know. I don't know how personal you want to get. So the more personal, the better, of course.
Okay, cool. I'm into it.
All right, cool. So for those of you who have been here, we are just switching modes real quick. And this is Mistress Viola Parker. And I'm going to do a super quick intro. Viola Parker is an event producer, professional dominatrix, and community organizer in Portland, Oregon. She's the co-founder of the boutique fetish space Sub Rosa, where she teaches and hosts introductory kink classes and workshops with Princess Natasha Strange. So, welcome again to the broadcast. You look very lovely. I like that thing around your neck.
Yes, this was a gift from one of my submissives. It's kind of just, I like jewelry that looks like a weapon or something mean. So
Yeah.
sharp things.
Sharp, daggery things. Don't fuck with me jewelry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or
Awesome.
do if you're into that.
Yeah. Danger, but you've been warned.
Yes, exactly.
So let's start from the beginning of your story. First of all, what are your pronouns real quick?
I go by, I use she, her pronouns for sure.
Okay.
Yep, those are my pronouns. And shall I just launch into how I started into this world of kink?
Actually, I wanted to know even further back from that. What were some of your very first kinky experiences before you knew that they were kinky or had a vocabulary for them?
Sure. Some of my root kink, I think, would be, okay, so I was a theater kid, and I was really into, putting on a costume and things like that. And role play is one of my favorite things. So I think, and I always joke that like BDSM is where theater kids go to grow up. And I do feel like all the theater kids were all the queer, like kinky, like people that were like trying to figure out what they were about, at least in the school that I was in. And I think that I was exploring the idea of like having different personas and roles and trying on sexy clothing even when I didn't feel sexy. And I was I didn't know what my sexuality was when I was younger. I started, and this is kind of an aside because I feel like my sexuality is like kind of tied into my kink in a way. But I started the Gay Straight Alliance at my high school. And, I had a shaved head, and I was very much like, thought I was straight, but not sure. But like was making out with my girlfriends and like, so I was just like, where do I fit in? Like, who am I? And I guess I think about that, and I haven't really made this connection very often, but I think about that as like, when I was really trying to figure out like what I was into. I was surrounding myself with queer, creative people, and but I was very like asexual at that time. I wasn't having, everybody else was like having the sex. And I do remember that when I was about 13, I think I was in middle school, and Interview with a Vampire came out, and I was so turned on by the vampire narratives and was reading like Anne Rice novels and stuff like that. And I see that now and I'm like, oh, yeah.
I relate 100%.
Yeah. The vampire thing was like my root.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was like this dark romance to kind of like the intimacy of, you know, drawing somebody's blood that also seemed very BDSM too. And also like you know Midori.
Mm-hmm.
She kind of like created, I mean, pinned this stereotype of doms as like art school queers, you know, like edgy art school queers that didn't know what to do with themselves. And I was like, that's not inaccurate for me.
Right. Yeah.
So as far as the vampire, the Anne Rice trilogy, did you read all three of them? Of course.
I didn't read all of them, I don't think. But I think that one of the things that turned my brain on the most was the idea of the control that the vampires had, the like, that the humans were like helpless. So the predatory kind of like thing where like, if you know, you were sexy and you had the red lips and the like tits up and the corsetry and the costumes too. Like, again, I go back to clothing because clothing for me is like a power thing, you know, like that's why I put on my, you know, my big sleeves before this interview so I can like feel in my power, you know. And so the clothing was really a turn on for me, all the corseting and the tits up and like that like heaving bodice and the blood down the neck and like all the idea that like you would be helpless to resist the charms of a sexy vampire, you know? So, and I think of that now as like with my desire, or with how I love to do like verbal control and the idea of hypnosis or coaxing someone into a space where they're helpless and they can't resist. The Ravishment Fantasies, which, you know, to be fair, I technically identify as a switch. So I've had fantasies on all sides of the spectrum. And I think that makes me it makes me a better dom because I understand where the desire comes from to be ravished and, you know, taken and just helpless and under the control of somebody else. But also like vampire movies are some of the first movies that I saw anyway, where the woman was being predatory, in some cases. And there were these like really powerful predatory women.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it when people tell their origin stories in this way where it's like the inception of kind of like that turn on, that part of you, that part of your brain that turns on your sexuality. Because I relate to almost all of it. I was definitely, you know, super into all the things that you're talking about, and the idea that there were powerful, seductive women that would just like use men and women, you know, like they would just use humans for their blood, but like have fun kind of like playing with them and seducing them. And that was really hot. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah, it's deep. And then somebody just told me that I look like this vampire in Resident Evil. The Lady DMS, I don't know, Lady D.
Okay.
It's like a 9-foot tall vampire. And I just went down the rabbit hole of like, I don't play video games, but I just watched YouTube videos of this vampire in this video game. And now I'm like so turned on. She has daggers on her hands. She can like, she's like Edward Scissorhands. So she has like bigger hands. And I just got these really long, like sharp claws. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this, the next cosplay for me is like set because she looks so cool. She's in this like vintage, like 20s, like dress and this big hat. And she has like claws. Yep. That's the one.
Yeah.
I don't have to say the name.
Dimitrescu? Dimitrescu?
Yes. Dimitrescu. I don't know, but everybody's cosplaying her, the video game people. So I'm just like, okay, that's the next 9 foot tall vampire that I want to pretend.
Oh, wow. I love it. Do you have really tall shoes too?
Yeah. I mean, I'm 5'9", so like in heels, like I'm easily over 6 feet. Mm-hmm. So one of my favorite things to do when I begin like a session with somebody who I haven't met before is just to stand over them and be like, I'm so much bigger than you, aren't I? And they're like, yes, mistress. And I'm like, yes, I am. And if they're taller than me, I make them get on their knees and then I say how much bigger than I am. You know, even if you're not bigger than someone, you can say it and they're like, yes, you are. You've just become larger than life for me.
Yeah. You can be bigger in many different ways.
Yes.
Other than physically. Yeah, thank you, Max Media, for that. So as you kind of lived life as a teenager and as a art school queer, like how did you first come into this idea of like what kink and BDSM were?
Well, probably in San Francisco. So I was living in San Francisco. Well, actually, I was living in Santa Cruz and traveling to San Francisco because I went to college in Santa Cruz. And I was traveling to San Francisco and going to Pride and then eventually going to Folsom Street Fair. And right around that time, I watched the movie Secretary, which was a total turn on to me. And the idea of like just that with her and that, whatever you call that thing. I should know that.
The spreader, the arm spreader collar thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if it has a technical word.
It was really a turn on to me. And then I ended up kind of dressing up like a really sexy secretary because I was like, that's a good look for me. And I went to my first Folsom Street Fair and I bought, I mean, I don't know if this is the first kink thing, but this is just where I'm going to go. But I bought a riding crop and I remember thinking, oh, somebody can like use this on me kind of thing. But then a man in a latex cat suit walked up to me and said, nice riding crop. And I was like, oh, I realized that I look pretty dommy holding this riding crop. And he wanted me to hit him with it. And then I was having a lot of fun with that. And then he was like, I really like feet. And he started like massaging my feet while I was sitting down watching this drag queen pull like a butt plug out of her ass that was attached to a bunch of balloons.
Oh, fun.
And then she let the balloons off and the butt plug went flying away. And I was like, San Francisco, I love you. So then I'm watching this trash queen. She was like covered in blood and like trash and she like pulls this butt plug out of her ass. And then I look at this guy and I'm like, we should hang out sometime. So then we started dating and he had a foot fetish and he had all these fetishes. And so I started doming him and I was just a natural and it was super fun. And I kind of came to it basically with partners, you know, and a lot of people that come to me for coaching now, you know, I tell them that story because I think that like you learn just by doing, you know, like your kinks, you sometimes don't even know what they are until you like find someone who will play with you. And then so I was kind of a late bloomer when it comes to kink. I've always been like surrounded by queer artistic people who had different desires, but kink didn't really enter my life into my mid-20s, probably in a big way. And then as I started exploring with him, I started getting into latex and corsets and fetish wear. And then I actually went and started ProDomming after that. So because I was having such a good time with it and because I needed money.
Yeah. Isn't it great? Mm-hmm. It's an expensive place. It's one of the most expensive in the US.
Yeah.
So it started with a foot rub?
Pretty much. And a boy in a latex catsuit who was very handsome. But I mean, like, if I think about it, going back to some of my first relationships, I've always been a dominant, kind of a leader in the space of sexuality as far as like leading what's going to happen, so it just got brought out in me.
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes all you need is that one key to unlock a door, and then everything kind of rushes through that door very easily. And it sounds like it was a very organic progression for you into ProDomming.
Yeah, I mean, in San Francisco, I was surrounded by porn performers, porn directors, like people working at Lusty Lady. I had a lot of friends that were in that work. And Lorelai Lee actually is a good friend of mine. We've known each other since we were in middle school. And she kind of got me started at the Gates, which was in the East Bay in San Francisco. And she said, you should go down there and see, like, if you want to maybe join this like kinky group of femmes. And I was already I was getting into latex and I had all these toys, and I'm like, yeah, okay, let's see what this is about. And that's when I met my people, like, I feel like when I met other ProDoms and I was just sitting there, like, trying on lingerie in the kitchen with a bunch of ProDoms, I was like eating macaroni and cheese and then like running off to go like step on someone's balls. Like, I was like, this is great. I love these femmes, like, they're my people, like, and so, when you look around and you're in some corporate job and you're like, I just feel like I have nothing in common with any of these people. But then you look around and all the sex workers and like, you're like, these are my people over here. I want to do more with them,
Yeah. Yeah. And why not? Like I think it helps to also have exposure when you're younger, living in San Francisco and being able to see things that you wouldn't even see on TV. I wish, I wish that a lot of people could have that experience. I feel like a lot of repressed people living in the Midwest just shun that because they're just like so afraid of it, and it's just like too much to go and explore. It's just like this deep rabbit hole that maybe they're afraid they're going to fall in and become addicts to. So it's so nice to have like the kind of like exposure and then environment where you can really just be yourself or let yourself kind of unfold. It's such a blessing. So has your you were talking about how in art school you were like kind of not very sexual, or you called yourself like kind of asexual.
In high school.
In high school. So how has your sexuality evolved through this door opening and further on?
Well, I definitely like kind of blossomed in college and kind of like got into myself. And I didn't know to go back to like what I tap into as a dom is power, like, and like the idea of control and the idea of like using your sexuality as a weapon almost, or like to control and to make them better, So I didn't know my power when I was younger. And I remember I was in a theater class and the teacher pulled me aside after I was working on some scene. And I think it was a Shakespeare scene. I did a lot of Shakespeare. And it was a scene with a guy that I had a crush on at the time, who was a total idiot, but whatever. Back when you like thought idiots were cool.
Yep.
And
I can relate.
And like it was what's that? The one that's all like he's trying to Taming of the Shrew, which is like such a kinky. If you go into Shakespeare, like it is fucked up because it's totally a dominant power exchange, power struggle between this woman who's very strong-willed and trying to be like dominated by the guy. And there's all these innuendos that are straight up pornographic in Shakespeare. So we were doing this really intense scene. And then he was like, you are really good at physical comedy and physical stuff, but it's like, you haven't like learned how to use your body yet. Like and it was true. Like I was kind of like really awkward. And so I was really good at physical comedy, but I was like, I didn't know, like I busted out. I was a late bloomer. I got these titties. And I was just like, what do I do with this? And he was like, you don't know your power yet. And this teacher told me that. And I always think about that because it's something that I try to teach women when I'm training them on how to step into their dominance. Like, you are powerful. And it's all, in a way, gender is all performance anyway, but power, anybody can have it. Anybody can tap into it. But so that feminine power is something that I stepped into like kind of late in the game and am continuing to find in myself and to like give air to it so that it can live. And I don't know if that answers your question at all, but when I started to find my power was probably in my mid to late 20s, honestly. And I just turned 40. Hello.
Happy birthday.
40, looking good. So, I've been a ProDomme for almost 13 years, and I started in my late 20s. So like, yeah, I was really kind of stepping into that power in my mid and late 20s.
Yeah, I think like the way that our society conditions women, some women never step into their power, and so it's really helpful and inspiring to see other women stepping into their power and really kind of helping more women and femmes step into their power too. And I think that is absolutely a form of sexuality, because it's like, I remember feeling so like charged and like juicy whenever I'm able to express my sexuality in a way that it can be received by somebody else, who really like is able to hold it, and to reciprocate it instead of being just like afraid of it or rejecting it. So that's absolutely a form of sexual evolution. And I think power is just like, it's so sexy, and people become hypnotized by it, especially relating to the vampires that Anne Rice wrote about. You know, they were so powerful because they were all these things, and they had this. They just knew that they could get the human. You know.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, to a certain extent, and the reason I bring up like theater, you know, I remember somebody kind of calling me a theater dom, and it felt like a catty thing. It was another dom, and they were like, "Oh, you're kind of a theater dom," and like as if that wasn't real. And I don't believe that to be true. I believe that I tap into like my energy through lenses and through archetypes and through like, you know, but that doesn't make it any less real for me, you know, or that isn't like, I'm having a real connection, but I'm also, you know, everybody in this world is code switching all the time. How do you behave in this room? How do you behave with this person? You know, and how do you find the thing that helps you get there? And in some respects, it can be a role play. It can be an outfit, a costume, you know, just because you're like costume and playing a role doesn't mean that the DS dynamic isn't strong and isn't, you know, powerful. Like this whole thing between lifestyle and ProDomme, sometimes like I feel like it's a lot of bullshit because this is my lifestyle. I'm an out dom. I live, this is my business, is my life. I have subs personally and I have subs professionally, but it doesn't mean that it's like I'm playing that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's not a role play for you to exist this way. It's not necessarily even performative, which I think, you know, some people equate the, like what you were saying, the theater of doming, the artifice and the theatrics of all the things that we bring into our experiences that we create for other people is no less genuine than anything else that people might do, like with each other without a transaction in privacy of their bedrooms.
Right.
It's not any less authentic of an expression of who we really are. It's just how we choose to kind of like, you know, display it. Yeah. I think that, you know, there's also like I definitely relate to tapping into and channeling like certain archetypes and maybe even being a kind of like a shapeshifter in some ways. And that's not necessarily because like I don't know who I am. It sometimes helps me to get, you know, into myself more when I can embody like something, you know, like larger than myself, like a goddess.
Yeah. Well, and also it's a protective measure because a lot of times the stuff that we're doing is really intense and can be really dark. And like, you know, I don't subscribe to the idea that if you put on a pair of stockings and panties, you're a sissy, you know, but I play that game certainly with some people, even though that language is really dark in some, I mean, in like the history of like why we say sissy or, you know, all these like, little bitch, you know, I can cuss on here, right? I didn't really.
Yeah. You can cuss.
I'm just like dropping F. I don't even like think about it.
Me neither.
But yeah, like it's I guess what I'm saying is like, it's kind of like a way to protect yourself. Like that wasn't me doing that. That wasn't me. That was this, you know, I don't know. Because it can be intense doing some of this, doing some of this play, you know, to me, it needs a compartment to live in that's outside of myself. And that's okay. And I actually tell couples too that are struggling to bring BDSM into their relationships that it's good to have it be in a compartment outside of your dailiness so that you can have this intense thing happen over here. And then, you know, you can go to the grocery store and go to yoga afterwards.
Yeah.
Whatever, you know, like, and so I believe, you know, compartmentalization usually like gets a bad rap. Like, oh, you're so compartmentalized. I'm like, that's actually healthy in some cases, especially with some of the more edgier play that you're doing, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think it is something that people, you know, even starting out in kink really could benefit from as a tool to kind of step outside of their ego, and instead of being like, well, I'm a family man, I don't do these things, you know, and being like the non-family man, and whatever that might exist in that compartment.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's actually really insightful to hear. And I think that compartmentalization can really help people to separate, you know, like out of their daily lives, and feel safe in a space that is private and discreet, and with somebody that's not going to expose them, and it stays in that container.
Well, and I think so much of the problems is that a lot of times people feel like the things that they do define who they are. So, like, for instance, so many people are defined by their work, or, you know, like, I'm this or I'm that, or because I like this thing sexually, I must be this. And that doesn't have to be the way you think about your sexuality. You can go get pegged and, you know, so many people think, oh, well, I'm not straight because I like to get pegged. I'm like, you're straight. You just like things in your butt, you know, like the things that you do don't need to define who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think we get really, really wrapped up in those definitions and the way that our actions define us. And you could just say, I'm going to do as many amazing things with my one beautiful lifetime that I can do in this world, and have a good time, and not let those things define me. And if you did shitty things in the past, hopefully you're not defined by those things, and you're going to get better, or whatever it is, you know, like. But it's with sexuality specifically, like, you know, people tend to like make those things define who they are. And I think that can be really detrimental to like understanding why they want them. And it it becomes a block.
Yeah. Is this one of the things that you talk about when you do your kink counseling or your kink educating?
You know, and kink education is pretty new for me. I've only been doing this for like the last 3 or 4 years. I guess that's not that new, but like, it became, it became really clear to me as I moved through pro-domination that there's a lot of people that just want to talk. And I'm sure you get that all the time, Dia, as well. You know, so much of my clients would say, like, my favorite part was talking to you. At the end, in that vulnerable space, that delicious subspace where they're just like, I've never been able to tell anybody this before. And so, and then as I became like a kink community, like party planner and things like that, people are always coming up to me and saying, how do I do this? And how do I meet this person? And how do I show up to a party? And what do I wear? And how do I meet someone? And so I ended up just like fueling all these like kind of conversations and giving people advice and providing, you know, counseling or like constructive feedback. And have just kind of moved into doing more of that coaching, you know. And I think a lot of times what people need is just permission and just somebody who knows about this stuff to talk to, because there aren't a lot of models out there for people to follow. There's, you know, more and more media happening that represents us, but it's varying levels of realistic or blah, blah, blah. So somebody who has experience in the community, somebody who puts on events, can be really helpful to talk to. So I've started to do more coaching, and a lot of it is just honestly giving people permission and advice about where they should start and how they might incorporate this stuff into their life. And then a lot of femmes coming up trying to get coaching on how to step into their dominance. Couples come in to see me for counseling or just like to training, you know, want to see a demo. We're going to co-top one of them. And I basically just try to work on making it feel really natural. And I am a very approachable Dom, I think a lot of people connect with me because of that. And, you know, I'm not like scary to, or not scary, but, you know, like, I'm not like an ice queen. I'm not like, fuck you, don't approach me. Like, but if they're going to pay me for my time, because honestly, don't come up to me at a party and like ask me like to solve your sex life, because that gets old. That gets really old.
Yeah, it does. Even though that does seem to happen to us almost everywhere we go, it feels like, even like in social media, people coming to us with their complex life stories and how to solve that. I think that, you know, it's really awesome that you can take your experiences as a pro-dom and apply them to all kinds of different situations for people that want to engage with kink or dominance or power exchange or anything that can help them grow. And that the fact that you know, spoke about permission, I think is really important too, because a lot of us were not given that permission or were denied permission when we were younger. So it's so simple, you know, but so like cathartic to hear and to receive, without even knowing that that's what we were looking for. Like I as a switch also, have really come to value permission and sometimes having to give it to myself, you know, but like having this like kind of ideation of like, well, I really want to do this, you know, I really want to do this thing, but is it okay, you know? And then saying, yes, it's okay. And just having this conversation with myself, you know? So really glad that, you know, more people are seeking this kind of interaction and advice from you and from all different kinds of people.
Me too. And I think it's like, it's what really made it so that I wanted to keep doing this work was that moment when people are just like, oh, I'm so excited. Like I got permission. Now I'm going to go do this thing. And I'm like, yeah, go do the thing. Like it's fun. Like don't deny yourself. Why should you? If you're doing consenting things with consenting adults, like why hold it back? And I think it's just so much like dismantling this architecture of like socialization, you know, like we've all grown up into a soil of racism, patriarchy, like rape culture, misogyny, all this stuff. And we're just, and homophobia, and we're just trying to like shed that. And you can't do that unless you are actively working on it. It's like, you can't just say, I'm not racist or, you know, I'm not homophobic. You actually have to work on that shit, like to dismantle that in your own brain, because that shit is popping up and you know it is. It's popping up in your brain all the time. And so how do you, and a lot of people, that's keeping them from pursuing the sex that they want, pursuing the relationships that they want. So it's a process, you know, and sexuality is a big part of that, you know, like not self-hating. So many people, you know, come to me, they're in their 60s or 70s and they're like, I've never let myself do this before. And that's heartbreaking, but it's also really exciting because they're doing it now. And so that process becomes, you know, like it's very motivating to continue to do this work because people are like, in this moment of exploration and discovery. And that's I'm honored to be there for that moment when it happens and when the person is treating it with respect like they should be.
Yeah, it makes this work feel so rewarding when you know that people are opening themselves up so much more, which leads me to ask you, do you think that through your counseling or your coaching and your pro-dom experiences, that BDSM and kink is becoming more widely acceptable?
I mean, yeah, even in the short time that I've been doing this work in the last 10 years, I've seen such a shift. I mean, if you look at media and media representations, there's certainly more of them. whether or not they're great, you know, there's more of them. So if you track it that way, I mean, I think it is becoming more acceptable, just like trans people are starting to show up more in the media, just like, you know, non-binary is a word. Pronouns are being discussed. You know, when I started the Gay Straight Alliance in high school, nobody was talking about trans people even, really. I mean, like, bisexuality wasn't even like claimed in that. Like, it was, you know, it was not very advanced. I mean, certainly those conversations were happening somewhere, but not in my high school.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I was the one starting those conversations or with my friends, and like, you know, it was just not happening, you know, and it's happening now. And so I think sexuality in general, and the myriad and the like kind of like shades and the non-binary and all the conversations that are happening will have to include BDSM, and will start to include that. Although, you know, there's still people like at Pride that are like, no kink at Pride, you know, so there is some some of the people that like should be part of this dialogue are still, there's some what do you call it, bias against kink. You know, people think it's violence, and people think it's like abuse, and so there's still a long way to go, but I definitely feel like there's more acceptance.
Yeah. I think see, you know, you're absolutely right in that, like, the expansion of a vocabulary to cover different gender identifications and sexualities is an indication that our culture is also expanding in this way of being more inclusive about, you know, BDSM as well. And I mean, I think like no matter where you go, there's always going to be resistance to something, you know. But it's interesting to see more people, especially like younger people, kind of approaching kink as if it was just normalized, you know, like it's just a part of their sexuality and it's no big deal. And that gives me a lot of hope. Because, you know, as people get older, like the consciousness of older paradigms and older consciousnesses are also going to fade out a little bit too when they die. Physically. You know, that's part of life, is death. So anyway, are you as a co-founder of Sub Rosa, have you oh, it's such a beautiful space. I want to see it in person one day.
It's hard to see, but I'm sitting here in the space right now. You can't really see it very well.
Oh, I like that it has like an old world charm to it.
Yeah, it's kind of vintage, but also modern in place. Like the gear we got is kind of modern, which I like. It doesn't look like.
Oh, I can see the cage a little bit. Looks more modern. Yeah. Oh, and there's a thing in the back.
That's a bondage wall.
Oh, yeah, that's nice. That looks more modern too.
Yeah. I don't really like the stuff that looks like too old worldy, you know, like, I don't know.
It's a nice juxtaposition, though. You know, I don't know if you it was intentional, but I think it's a good mix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very.
So as far as being a co-founder of an actual physical play space, what are some of the benefits that community has brought you that maybe like society didn't do for you?
Oh my God, so many things. I mean, I didn't want to be the dom working out of a dungeon by herself. I never did. I pursued a partnership with Natasha Strange and pursued starting a space with another person because community is so important to me. I started in a house of domination on the East Bay that I mentioned earlier, and it was so lovely to be in that space with those people that like I've always kind of chasing that vibe. And So it's been intentional, like, to find community for me. One of my superpowers is I'm a really good networker. And when I moved here, it was 8 years ago, I was like emailed all the time, hey, can we have coffee? Like, I'd like to meet you, and let's hang out. And then I started organizing events, and I'm very much a kind of bringer together of people. And that's one of my happy places and one of my skills and things that I feel like I can offer the world. So, yeah, so many things. I mean, also, it's easier to do things when you have a community network around you and structure, and it has, like, it was very specific too that I wanted to build a femdom community, because I feel that a lot of kink spaces and sex clubs and things like that tend to be owned by men.
Mm-hmm.
And I had worked in a couple spaces that were owned by men, and it was really not working for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was always my intention to create like community, and we're actually, we rented the space next door to Sub Rosa, and we're starting like a kinky co-working space for other ProDoms and sex educators to kind of like find synergy and work together and get out of the house and have a place to meet and drink tea and like work together. So,
I love it.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Because, Sub Rosa is kind of like the play space, but there isn't really another, like place to be. And so it's really nice to have the space next door. So that's being set up this month. Actually, it's very new. So we're like moving furniture and having people build stuff. And so that's all happening because of the community, that we around us.
That's really smart, because it could almost be like the break room or whatever, where you're waiting for your session, but somebody else is in there doing their session, and so you don't have to like come from across town or something and not have it like go hang out at a Starbucks or whatever. You have a place to where you could actually like do your emails and maybe even like get some tips for how to do Sex Panther better or whatever. That is brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, it kind of just happened where the space was available, and then we were like, we need an office, because also I rent the space out to other community people, because there's a lot of kinksters in Portland, and during COVID, it was like nobody had a place to be, or they couldn't go to the sex clubs anymore. And so we actually were able to stay afloat by renting the space out to couples and people wanting to play in a beautifully appointed play space. And so I'm checking in people and checking people out, and I'm driving back and forth. So it's just nice to have an office next door where I can actually like be camped out. And my dog is like literally like asleep right next to me right now. Can you see him?
Oh yes, in his little cage. Oh, what a very lucky dog.
Yeah, he's very lucky. He's a monster. He looks really cute right now, but he's a monster.
Well, he can be, because he's so cute.
Yeah, I know.
If he wasn't so cute, it probably wouldn't be so easy. So as a community, as community builds, do you see Sub Rosa like also expanding even more in the future? Or what do you guys have on the horizon?
Well, right when COVID hit, we were like hitting our stride, which was classes. We actually set up like 25 folding chairs in front of the bondage wall and have an educator stand up. And we were inviting, visiting educators and people coming through, or different educators, to come by and do classes. And we just want to keep doing that. That was going really well. And we were building a really good network of people that were looking for that kind of education and a place to see things they've never seen before. in a way that you can't really do in a sex club or at a kink party. I don't think we're going to expand in the next 3 years beyond these two spaces, but the kind of like 5-year plan is to buy a building and take it over and make it rad, because we will eventually get too big for this space, and people, when you have a dungeon, they just want to donate gear to you. Have you noticed that?
Yep, I have. Yes.
So people keep giving us things and we're like, oh, where are we going to put this thing?
Yeah.
I'm like, we just need that building someday. But
yeah.
And I want it like to be a femme building with multiple use cases. Like, maybe there's a club at the bottom where there's more of a community space. Maybe there's the private dungeon up top, something like that.
A complex.
A complex. Yes.
Yes. I love it. I love it. That's awesome that's kind of like the vision. And I mean, there's so few places like that, that are semi-public, I guess, or that are accessible. So that's really amazing that you guys are, looking to that.
Yeah, it's not really fully formulated, but it's good to put your vision out there and also be flexible. I was talking to Natasha when COVID hit. It's like, so when you're in this industry, you learn to be flexible and to pivot quickly and be really kind of just creative. And that's one of if I didn't feel that way in a thing I was doing, I would probably be bored. Mm-hmm. So, if things change, maybe I'll be buying a farm like you. There's so many possibilities, but I do love Portland and I love the kinky queer scene here. And I do want that space to exist. And the other problem is a lot of the queer spaces and the sex clubs are also owned by people who are not maybe as like up on all the stuff. And so it would be nice to have like a queer space. I realized I was like, I gotta be political here and not talk shit. But
up on all the stuff is totally politically correct.
Not all up on all the stuff.
Up on all the stuff. We know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, not all up on all the stuff. So I'm up on all the stuff, and just like somebody who is in the community running that space.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody who knows the ins and outs of that actual community because they are of that community and not just like a business enterprise.
Yeah, but I am a businesswoman. And the problem with a lot of kink community spaces is the model doesn't work. They don't last very long because there's not any money coming in, because people are like, you shouldn't charge so much for classes. And I'm like, I'm going to charge for classes, like I'm going to pay my educators. I'm going to pay my performers. I pay my performers that perform at my events. I pay I pay everybody. I don't want people to think that they have to provide emotional labor for free. So you've got to find the middle ground there, because there's the people that try to just do a community space and it's far too community. It's not. Look, you can make it free for some people, but the people that can pay, they should pay.
Yeah. There has to be a balance. And like if it's too businessy in one direction, then you're lacking the humanity aspect of paying all your performers and laborers, and educators a proper wage. And then if it's too community, then you're not making the money. So I think that, you've got the good balance there.
Yeah.
Take all that into consideration.
It's got to happen.
Yeah. So do you have any important announcements for yourself or for Sub Rosa?
I am fully vaccinated as of early May, so that's exciting. I got a puppy and he's amazing.
You're taking in-person sessions now, correct?
I am, and I'm asking, the questions, and I'm taking in-person sessions, and those are starting to pick up again, and it's great. I'm not sure when I'm going to start doing my 50 Shades of Shut the Fuck Up femdom party again, which was every month. And then I also did another party called Quink, which was a queer kink play party.
Such good branding.
I have great names. I'm really good at naming things.
Yeah.
We also named the club next door Club Rosa. So that's
I love it. Yeah.
So there's Sub Rosa and Club Rosa. So that's the big announcement, really, is that we're starting the co-working space, Club Rosa, and that we are seeking a few more members that are local and that really want to use the space. But they're kind of like invite only. But if you know us and you know, or if you've been involved, like apply and see if you want to be part of it.
How do people apply?
They will have to reach out to us via email. Or, and we can kind of follow up, but it really is specific to people that are like using the space. And so we're getting there. But that's the big thing. And we're also seeking like support in terms of people that want to build shit, people that want to donate stuff and IKEA gift cards and things like that. Cause we have a lot of setup to do. And it's been a rough year. I mean, we have survived, but we have not made a lot of money this year as a business. So that's been hard, but I am so proud of us because I think if you made a small profit in 2020 in any business, you're doing fucking great. Yeah.
Yes. And if you didn't close your doors, then you have done something with, yourself. And at La Maison de Rouge, we definitely were worried, but we were able to get a little bit of help too. So I'm really glad to hear that, people are out there helping and believing in the cause, believing in the kink cause.
A lot of people donated. We also got some money from the SBA. So even though they like made that whole statement about prurient businesses, do you remember that?
Yeah, whatever.
Whatever.
You just have to put the right words in there so that you cover your ass. We get you. So I have Mistress Viola's website as well as her Twitter, and both her Twitters, because Sub Rosa PDX is on there as well, and then Instagram. So if you wanted to follow or reach out for a session or some other kind of coaching, please check out her website. And as of right now, we can maybe take a few questions if you're down.
Oh, sure. And I'm so sorry. Was I an hour late? Was
I
an hour off? Okay.
Yes.
I like realized that. And then when I walked in and I'm like, oh, I had the time completely off. Sorry.
It's totally okay. Cause I should always, mark the time difference also. And I didn't. So it's partially my fault, and I'm sorry, cause like I expect you to know the time difference, and I don't think everybody thinks in those ways all the time.
Apparently, I don't. I was thinking 2 hours time difference, and it's obviously 3. So that was all on me. I don't know why I did that.
It's all good. We made it work. I'll just go back and change all the headlines later, because right now it says open Q&A with Dynasty, which I did for like 20 minutes.
Well, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, it was fun actually. And then to shift gears, and it was like you get 2 for 1 today, guys.
Well, thank you for being so flexible.
Of course. So I have a question here from Gary Busey. I pronounce masochism with a cha sound like nacho. Am I a maverick or just plain wrong?
Masochism. I feel like you're wrong, Gary Busey, but it's because you've been doing a lot of drugs since like the 60s. I don't know. Gary Busey, you gotta work on that. You gotta work on that.
I think it has a funny ring to it. Masochism, like
masochism. It's fun to say. It's chewier. It's crunchier.
It's crunchier. like nachos.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I think
great.
that he asked that question because he wants to get beat for it.
I'm sure a lot of people do that, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. Bobcat asks, what is one of the most rewarding aspects of doming for you?
Oh, honestly, the 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 most rewarding aspect is the energy exchange. And I was saying to someone, like, I don't go into a session with an agenda. I want it to be a collaboration. And I want us to be creating something together. I am not, I'm the Dom, but if you're not giving me anything, if you're not giving me any exchange, any feedback, and feedback, I mean like sounds or giggles or whatever, or thank you, mistress, or whatever.
Squirms and dances.
Squirms and wiggles
Yeah.
and groans. I get bored. So for me, it's gotta be an exchange. It's gotta be like something we created together. And then I leave and I think, wow, that was like really, my life is cool, and that's like that when it's good, it's like that for me, it's like, what a fucking awesome day,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's where I feel like I'm not trying to make every show the Viola show. I want the show to be a unique thing that just got created by two people.
Yeah, a duet.
A duet.
Sorry. That's an awesome answer. I approach sessions very differently than I used to, and I think that it is very much a collaboration where feedback is super important, and I'm not just like playing with a sack of flour, and it feels like fulfilling and charging when somebody's like resisting or struggling or hollering or whatever, just, it doesn't have to be extreme, just something. Let's see. NY Rubber Gimp has a really great question here. Curious how you think attire plays into a session and what you're able to do. Example, corset and big heels restricting you. Or do you enjoy subs who don't care if you're in leggings and a tee?
I mean, I do like it when I can. I mean, I wear what I do. I wear what I feel comfortable in. But I just have to. I have to say this. I am so tired of latex.
Ooh.
I don't like it. I like it. I like the way it looks,
Mm-hmm.
but I hate wearing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally had to come to that just like acknowledgement with myself. It's pretty, it's fancy, it's expensive, blah, blah, blah. But I am a sweaty mess in latex. I can't do a long scene with somebody if I'm wearing a latex catsuit. I'm sorry. I know that it's hot, but it's gonna limit me.
Mm-hmm.
I will say corsets, I'm so used to wearing them that I can do most things in corsets and high heels. Like I've just been doing it long enough. But it's definitely a moment where I put a blindfold on somebody because I'm moving like up here and I'm just like,
Yeah.
And that's where the blindfold comes in. So now you know why I'm blindfolding you. But
yes.
I mean, it just depends on what I'm doing. Like I certainly do sessions in leggings and a t-shirt and like flats. But for me, like I said earlier, I like to be in my power. And a lot of times my power is represented by my ensemble.
Mm-hmm.
It's intimidating. It's hot. It's scary. My tits are like all, so.
Gotta have the tits out.
I like to have obviously I like my boobies. So I like to have my stuff on. But if I'm doing if I'm on the ground trying to put somebody in a back bed, I'm not wearing a corset and high heels. made that mistake before. So what am I doing? So
I had that realization about latex today when I looked in my closet and I was like, I've got these bug bites on my legs and I'd really like to cover my legs, and I could wear latex leggings, but God, I really hate wearing latex. And if somebody requests it and is nice about it, then I'll probably wear it. But it's like so uncomfortable. And I'm not even a sweaty person, but I will like pee down my legs in latex with sweat.
And some subs are like,
yeah, and that's great. But it's I'm still kind of just like,
no,
it feels so gross. Yeah. So definitely relating to you about the latex and also the got to put your stuff on, like for me, my asset is my butt. So I'm like wearing something where you can see my butt, not going to hide it. My butt over my boobs. So yeah, I think dressing powerfully is really important to feeling powerful.
Yeah.
Let's see. We've got another question from Bobcat. What is one piece of advice you would give your younger Dom self just starting out?
Oh, I read that question and I just saw a younger Dom starting out, and I didn't think of myself. Okay, so myself. I would say you don't have to be someone else. You can be yourself. Because I think when you're young and you're starting out, you really feel like you have to put on more. And I think that's what I see a lot of young Doms kind of doing is letting the fetish wear kind of define them rather than defining, like what that question, he said, leggings and a tee. You can be a fucking Dom in leggings and a tee if you're a Dom, but when you're a baby Dom, you're often like, I have to
prove myself.
I have to prove myself. But I learned so much doing it the way I did it. And I don't know if I could have come to this any other way, but to any of the baby Doms out there, this is a business. You're starting a business. Get in, understand that you're an entrepreneur. And I think that's something I would have told myself. You're an entrepreneur. If you're starting a Dom business, you're an entrepreneur and you need to approach it as such. You need to have a bookkeeper. You need to approach it like you're starting a business, because it is that. You need to invest in it. And it's not just like I didn't make money as a Dom for like the first 4 or 5 years, really. I mean, let's face it, I did not.
Were you reinvesting in yourself?
I was part-timing it. I was working other jobs. I didn't really go hard into I was working another job up until a few years ago, honestly. I've always been a diversified person.
Wow.
And it was more like a volunteer, like something I love to do job on the side. But yeah, it's a business. That's another piece of advice.
That's a really good piece of advice. And there's a lot that goes into a business that we don't recognize when we are working for somebody else. So as an independent, contractor, as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of things that you have to take care of, which you don't necessarily think about. But as a sex worker, there's even more things that you have to consider beyond just being an entrepreneur, because there's safety and privacy and not getting shut down. So it's definitely something that I would seek out mentorship for sometimes, I would say for part of it.
Have a mentor for sure. And, there's a lot of things that most businesses can do that we can't do. because of the platforms shutting us down and stuff like that. So the mentorship of somebody in the industry is really important.
Yes. Yes. So I'm not seeing any more questions pop in, and we are at a good stopping point. Thank you, Miss Viola, so much for your warmth and your generosity and your candidness and everything else that you bring to this world.
Thank you so much, Dia. I appreciate you so much and what you've been doing. And I think you're wonderful.
Thank you.
I have been so impressed with everything La Maison is doing. And I appreciate you spending so much time on this today because of my mistake.
No big deal at all. Actually, there's one more really good question that just came in. Do you have time for it?
That's a good one. Advice for contacting a dom so your email message does not go straight to the trash bin. I actually teach a class called Come Correct. And you can buy it on my website.
There you go.
It's 2 hours of me telling you not how to do that.
Yes. And we also have live broadcasts of us dramatic readings of emails that we've gotten from like potential subs and clients that are no-nos.
Oh my God, I love it. Yeah, I can link to that in the chat or something.
Yeah, put it in the comments, please.
Because it is, I have a passion for that class because I want people to be successful, but it is also like, you have to understand when you're approaching a woman online, the amount of bullshit that she has seen is far more than you can probably fathom. Mm-hmm. And you need to come correct and come with respect and do your research and all of that, because otherwise it's just gonna, not. I also just want to throw out there that I have been I don't know if this is your experience too, Dia, but I have been getting like at least one message a week of somebody who's been catfished by somebody using my pictures.
Oh, wow.
So that's happening a lot these days. I also want to acknowledge that, like, you got to do your research too when you're reaching out to a dom. Most doms, any real pro dom is not going to show up in your inbox on a dating platform and say, do you want to be my sub? Because that's how these guys are getting catfished a lot of the time. They're like, you approached me and we've been talking for 2 months and I've sent you all this money. And I'm like, that wasn't me, honey bunny.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry. That's a whole nother hustle. And they're making me look like I have bad grammar and inappropriate behaviors. And I'm like, no, that's not me. So I don't know why they keep stealing my photos, but it's just happening a lot. So y'all also have to be careful about the doms online and do your research. Mm-hmm. And then when you've done your research, read their website and approach them how they've asked you to. And that's the best advice I can give for that.
Yeah, it's really easy to kind of like take in the information as if you would, like, say you're looking for a new neighborhood to live in. Don't you want to do a little bit of research about what that neighborhood is going to be like for you? Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's most of pro doms have information on their websites as to how to contact. Some of them even have something like a form. So it's super easy to just fill out, the things that they ask for in the form. Most pro doms will not have just like an email that you just like write whatever you want to. That's not really how we prefer to be contacted. So sometimes if you come upon something like that, I would say, do a little bit more research, but also maybe introduce yourself, maybe, hello, my name is Gary Busey, and I'm really into ball busting and being a smartass, like, are you into that as well? Instead of just being like, make me your slave. That will go in the trash bin.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I I don't know what these catfishers are doing, but some of them are even using my website and then using, like, saying this is my website and then using a different email with my name in the email address.
Wow.
But it's like Mistress Viola 567 or something. And they're like using all my pictures and like, it's so shitty. So just be aware that there's like people out there that are not real, but it's if it seems too good to be true, if she's like, because a lot of them are like, well, she wasn't trying to get any money from me at first. I'm like, that's where you went wrong.
Yeah, and ProDoms seldom approach people to try to make slaves out of them.
No.
That's not really something I've ever really heard of.
Yeah. And I'll go ahead and link to Come Correct right now.
Perfect. And on that note, we will actually say goodbye again. You're putting it in the comments, yes? So I can.
I'm trying to figure out how to do that, but it doesn't look like I have the ability to. But maybe I am just not things. Oh, there it is. Oh, okay. Chat with host and other guests. Did that show up?
No. Wait, that's okay. So that showed up in the private, and I'm going to post it. I'm going to cut and paste it and put it in the public.
Yeah, it's on Gumroad, and I highly recommend it for people that are just starting out.
There we go. So here is Come Correct, and that is now in the chat.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Oh my God. Thank you so much. And thank you for so much of your time as well.
Thank you again. And I'm so happy to have like powerful, badass femdoms all over the country. Can't wait to visit you one day.
Well, we got to have you on one of our boot camps too. That's like, that's got to happen. Cause I think we'll keep doing virtual stuff, but you know, and when you come visit, we'll have to feature you at all the things.
I would love that. I haven't visited Portland ever, and it's on my list.
It's great. You'll like it. Don't worry, we're not all Antifa here, I promise. I mean, I am anti-fascist, but
I'm happy to visit any kind of place in the U.S. that is different than New York, you know?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you, audience, for another wonderful broadcast. And I will say goodbye for now.
Bye.
Bye.